What's up, everyone? Nick Yuskevich back again with Daily Fantasy Winners in an episode of Tee to Green here for you. And this is the Wells Fargo Championship preview. And so this is a tournament being played just outside Wilmington, North Carolina this year. And this is being played at Quail Hollow Golf Club this year. And this is a week, I'm just going to say, kind of as a disclaimer again, unfortunately we just had one of these a couple weeks ago, and I'm going to say it again. This is a week I would also recommend limiting your bankroll or potentially even passing on this week if you don't play daily fantasy golf that much or you're kind of a beginner. And the reason why I'm saying that is because it is a new golf course this year at at Eagle Point is the name of the course, and it's been traditionally at Quail Hollow. But the reason why it's not at Quail Hollow this year is because that is the host of the PGA Championship later this fall, and that is a course that's been going under renovation basically since the Wells Fargo last year. And so, they're doing construction, getting it PGA Championship ready, essentially. And so, and a lot of the stuff we do here with Tee to Green, and I think a lot of the good stuff to do with GPP advice when it comes to daily fantasy golf on DraftKings is we're going off of obviously a lot of course history and tournament history and things of that nature, but it's not just the results of how the players do. It's also just, what types of players do well, what do they normally do well statistically, and you're going off of using variants of year-to-year type of stuff and trying to use that information, what other players might do and getting ownership advantages, things of that nature. So anyways, so this is just a week I'm just mentioning. This is a week you may want to pass on or just limit your bankroll a little bit. Next week's the Players' Championship. I'll dive more into that next week, but I'll just kind of say that's one of the best DFS weeks for PGA in my opinion, and it's actually just one of the best golf tournaments to watch if you're a golf fan. So there's nothing wrong with just waiting a week on this one. And so just I mentioned that, but I do have a few things here for you, so that I can kind of give you a couple things strategically and some details about the tournament. So here we go. What do you need about the tournament? Like I said, it's a new golf course called Eagle Point Golf Club. The strength of this field is average to mediocre. It's slightly weaker than previous years, probably because it's at a new golf course this year. And so, if it was at Quail Hollow this year and they were going back to Quail Hollow for the PGA Championship, then I bet you anything that this would be a stronger field. But since it's not, then I think that was the reason why it's taking a slight step back this year. And players are kind of gearing up for the Players Championship next weekend. So, but there's still some decent players, and it's not like a horrible field, and it's actually even a little bit better than a couple of the ones we've had previously, anyways. Not including the Zurich, but the Texas tournament and the RBC. So some details you need to know about this new course, Eagle Point. This isn't like a scrub course or a big drop down from Quail Hollow. This is actually a very good golf course. I was just doing a little bit of research on it, and it's on actually Golf Digest greatest courses list. It's a lot of the professionals and the grounds crew. They are just the grounds crew, the media and the professionals, the players, have been raving about how great of a job the grounds crew has done on this golf course, meaning in the superintendents, because this golf course, it's right now it's almost being compared to Augusta National a bit from the condition standpoint. Marsh Benson, I believe, is his name. He's the former superintendent, actually, of Augusta National, was actually involved, I believe, with some of the improvements of the course. And Stephen Bowditch, I saw tweeted, he said, I thought we were playing in North Carolina this week and not Georgia, hinting at Augusta National. And so the course is just in perfect shape. It's getting a lot of positive reviews. And just looking at the details of the golf course, it looks like a fantastic course. And obviously, if it's on the top 100 courses list, this isn't a mediocre course. And so I actually think it'll be a pretty good tournament to watch, even though it's at a new location, and maybe you're into that as well. Anyway, so some specifics. It's a par 72, tips out at 7,259 yards. Not a long course at all for a par 72. 4 par 5s. 640 yards for number 4, 549 yards for number, actually don't have the numbers down. It's the second par 5 in the back, or the second par 5 in the front, excuse me. I think it's number 9 if I remember right, but it's 640, 549, 562, and 580. 580 is a hole 18, I remember that, but sorry about that, I didn't write those down. But anyways, there's 4 par 5s, doesn't matter what numbers they are anyways. But in any case, these par 5s, so 640, 549, 562, and 580. This tells me that longer hitters could rack up eagles, and just looking at kind of the descriptions of some of the holes on some of the places I've read, it looks like that some of these holes will be able to be hittable in 2. The first hole, 640, may be a little bit more difficult, obviously, but maybe for the Bombers it might be possible, pending how it plays out and everything. But just keep an eye on, though, that not the hole that's 640, hole number 4. The other 3, though, they have water on those holes, and so even though they're a little bit shorter, they're certainly a little bit tougher of driving holes and approach shots, especially if you're going for the green in 2. And so as far as just the course overall, not focusing on the par 5 so much here for a second, it certainly looks like the longer hitters could be racking up the eagles on the par 5s. However, it does look like it could be a bit of a ball striker's golf course and not so much of just a quote-unquote bomber's course. You can be good at ball striking and be a longer hitter, of course, as well. That's obviously possible, but it's just to say that there might be some accuracy tendencies here on some of the holes. And so just because there's water on about half the holes on the golf course, and then there's also, like, on the edge of the courses, you got the woods that come into play on some of the holes on one of the sides, and so and then that comes in on a handful of holes. And so this is probably, it looks like it could be a balance between bombers and ball strikers, if that makes sense. And obviously it's pretty tough to tell how tough the greens will be, just because we haven't seen a tournament here. We don't have any data to go off of. You can look at the greens, and I kind of sense this was with some of the improvements of the course, that it was oversaw by one of the former Augusta National superintendent. I'm guessing these greens will be pretty difficult if I had to guess, but that's just kind of a gut feeling a little bit, as opposed to really having something very factual to bring to the table, I guess. So that's a little bit tough to tell. So we're playing a little bit of a guessing game here, just again without any concrete data. And so basically on the strategy angle of what all this means is, number one, you can obviously always use recent form. It's always a common thing. From a lineup building standpoint, there is a big drop off in the field strength from the 8K range to the 7K range, but there really isn't much difference between the 7K and 6K range, and you'll get the feel for that if you take a look at the odds per dollar tab on DailyFantasyWinners.com. And so this is a week that stars and scrubs is a little bit more acceptable, I think, when you're building your lineups. I say that especially for GPPs as well. And so and then as far as like the whole longer hitters thing, just to get back to that for a second, I would make sure I'm including at least a few longer hitters in your lineup, because it is a course at 7,259 yards. And so if this is a course where there are a lot of fairway bunkers, and and there's some hazards obviously, but if you're a bomber and you can get the eagle upside on the par 5s, but then you're also taking advantage of maybe some of the par 4s where you're able to drive it over fairway bunkers, and you can get a big advantage that way. Maybe bombers do end up doing better here as opposed to more of the ball strikers. It's just it's just difficult to tell. So just to kind of be safe with your lineups, especially in GPPs, I would make sure that you're including a few longer hitters, which shouldn't be too difficult this week. There are plenty of bombers in this field, and there's some shorter hitters. It's a good balance of the types of players that are in this field. And so and then but at the same time, you don't have to go all bombers. I was just saying you should at least include a few. It doesn't have to be all 6 guys. And then the last thing, you can, again, like I said, look at the odds per dollar sheet as usual on DailyFantasyWinners.com. The odds per dollar sheet, it's still not the greatest in terms of looking at it from a. I mean, it's not, DraftKings still isn't very aligned with the sportsbook odds, but it's been slightly better as of late. It hasn't been great, but it's been slightly better. I don't know if they've been still making tweaks to it or whatnot, but in any case, you can look at that and obviously use that especially for your cash game lineups if you're choosing to go that route, but you can use it for GPPs as well. And let's just move right on into the picks here. So Dustin Johnson obviously is the favorite here, and rightfully so. He's about 4.5 or 5 to 1 odds to win the tournament, which is about right given that there's, given the strength of this field. And even though he's coming off the back injury, I would not be concerned at all about that. I've seen a few things that Dustin's been, hitting balls on the range and he's fine. And Dustin even said after his after he fell on the stairs, the day before the Masters started, he said that he feels like this is the kind of thing where it's like, I cannot play for a few days, but like in a few days, I I could be fine easily. And so obviously we're several weeks removed from the Masters, and I think Dustin's 100%. You don't have to worry about anything injury wise or WD wise. With the Players Championship next week, it's too early to. I'm doing this a few days before the tournament actually starts, and so I haven't dove into the weather too much. The only thing where I could see WDs really become an issue here is if weather comes into play, just because the Players Championship is such a big tournament, and it's considered the fifth major. That if there's rain and then the end of the tournament doesn't come till Monday, I could see some players with doing the BS withdrawal basically and wanting to get over there in time. But if as far as like injuries go for Dustin, I would not be concerned about that at all. And I'm not saying Dustin would withdraw anyways if the rain issue comes up into play. I'm just saying that for everybody, not him specifically. It just made me think of it. But the one thing about Dustin I would say is I would probably more use him in GPPs and not cash. Obviously GPPs because he can win the tournament and you're going to need the winner to win in your GPPs. But the thing is, for cash games and just the lineup building standpoint, if you use Dustin, he is $13,000. That is very expensive on DraftKings. And so you think you're stuck with about $7,400 per player on average left if you do roster Dustin. And like I said, there's a huge drop-off between 8 and 7K. So since you want as many people as you can to get 6 of 6 through the cut, and you're definitely going to want that, in your cash lineups, it's just like I would just you can go stars and scrubs a little bit more even in your cash lineups, but to do it with Dustin, you're really hammering yourself because it's more like a star and scrubs as opposed to stars and scrubs. So it would be better if you went with like John Rahm or Adam Scott or Phil Mickelson, and then grabbed one or two of the 9K guys or a couple of the 8K guys or something like that. It depends on how you want to mix and match and which guys you're using, of course. So I think that'd be a little bit better for cash, in my opinion. As far as my favorite my favorite 10,000 or above golfer, not named Dustin Johnson, just as far as winning the tournament, I like Adam Scott probably, actually, of the other three between him, Phil Mickelson, and John Rahm. He is the cheapest of the three on DraftKings at $10,000, but at the same time, Adam Scott's done very well in Florida tournaments, and this isn't a Florida golf course, but at the same time, this is a little bit more like a Florida course than like some others. This course it's not perfectly flat like a Florida course, but it is flat. It's relatively flat, and there's a lot of water that comes into play, and it's on a type of course that we've seen Adam Scott do well in the past. And Adam Scott is a longer hitter as well. I have a hard time choosing Phil Mickelson on anything that could potentially promote driving accuracy, and Phil could absolutely win the tournament, don't get me wrong, but I just have a hard time recommending him the most if something involves driving accuracy. And John Rahm could crush it. I mean, but at $11,000 and he's $1,000 more expensive than Adam Scott, that's a little much to me. And I just think you're getting. Maybe Scott and Rahm are about the same player right now. I still have a slight tendency towards Scott just because Rahm is so young, but and trying not to be. I'm trying not to get over the top there on that, but I just think Rahm will probably be owned a bunch. Scott will probably be a little bit lesser owned, even though he's cheaper. And we've seen good history here with Adam Scott on these types of courses anyway. So I would just have a slight lean towards Scott. Definitely feel free to use Rahm and Mickelson in your GPPs. I'd like Rahm probably a little bit more than Mickelson, just to kind of rank those top guys there in that range. And so as far as my favorite guy that's not 10K or above, I would actually just drop slightly down to Webb Simpson at 9,700, and you might see Webb Simpson at 9,700 and think that's pretty expensive for him. I don't know about that. I'm used to seeing him, sometimes in the 7K range or at least in the 8K range at some of these weaker tournaments. But the thing is, you should know, and I'm sure I'm not the only person to find this because it was pretty easy for me to find. Webb Simpson and Carl Pedersen are members at this golf course. I knew Webb Simpson was from the North Carolina area and he was familiar with Quail Hollow, but Webb and Carl are both members at Eagle Point, where the tournament is this year. And since this is a private golf course, and it's and not that like your pros can get on private courses if they want to, don't get me wrong, but since it's at a private course and this isn't a course that's ever been on the PGA Tour, I just have a hard time believing that like a bunch of pros have a ton of experience here or even any experience here. I'm sure there's some other guys that have played here before, but I just don't think it's going to be that many people. And not that I think like it might be the biggest deal in the world, but of all the people in the 9K range, there isn't anybody I particularly particularly love over anybody else. Paul Casey's probably the best golfer of them, just straight up. But given that Webb Simpson is a member here, and it's not just a course he's played like a lot of times in tournament history, if he is a member here, he has probably played here a bunch. So my guess is he'll know the greens very well and everything like that. So I would give a little bit of a lean toward Webb Simpson here, despite 9,700 looking, a little bit iffy there on the price there. So, anyways, that's it for this video. I know it's not maybe quite as much as what we usually do on these the preview videos, but again, like I said, just a tough week to do when we have not a ton of data to go off of. I will still do the usual list on DailyFantasyWinners.com. I'll be surprised if I have any golfers that I would recommend fading here for high ownership, just because there's not anything course history related to go off of. If there is going to be something, it'll be somebody that has like really high odds per dollar combined with really good recent form type of a thing. But if I do, it'll only be like one person, maybe two at the most. But I don't even know if I'll have any recommendations there for this week in that regard. And so for next week, like I said, Players Championships next week. That should be awesome. Hopefully, by the time you've seen this, I did do a mailbag episode yesterday. It hasn't uploaded yet, but hopefully it should be uploaded around the same time this is being uploaded. A mailbag, it was basically a strategy video, but I did a mailbag edition where I answered several people's questions and kind of shared them to the public for everybody. And so just because I think it would be helpful for everybody to hear them, and it'll help them for their PJ Daily Fantasy down the road. So check that out. And yeah, I'll be back next week for the Players Championship preview. And thank you for watching. I'm at Nicky Skevich on Twitter. Daily Fantasy Winners is on Twitter at DFantasyWinners. And then please subscribe to our YouTube channel. All right. Thanks, guys.